A lot of people are outraged. A lot of people have questions about some video that was released by the Ohio State Highway Patrol last Friday. And as details come out, there are a lot of questions that need to be asked. This was an incident that happened back on July 4th. You had a semi-truck driver who was, they were attempting to pull him over. It was an inspection vehicle through the Ohio State Highway Patrol. He would not pull over. There's even reports out now that as he was driving, he called 911. He was afraid. He said, "Why are they trying to kill me?" The dispatcher was telling him to pull over. He does finally stop with the assistance of some stop sticks, and he gets out. In the video, it is pretty clear that he has his hands up. But unfortunately, even though this was an Ohio State Highway Patrol incident, they had called ahead for some assistance. Circleville police show up. Circleville is about an hour south of Columbus, a very small, tiny community. It is the Circleville police officers on the other side of the highway that have a canine unit. That canine is barking. You're going to hear the body cam that you're going to see is from the Ohio State Highway Patrol. You hear a commander saying, "Don't release the dog, don't do it. He has his hands up," something to that effect. When you watch this, I want you to consider whether or not the Circleville officer can hear it. And regardless of whether or not he can hear it, this is an individual who had their hands up, kneeling on the side of the highway, should the dog have been released at all. We're going to bring in a canine expert after you watch the video and ask those questions. Here you go. Take a look.
Do not release the dog with his hands up. Do not release the dog with his hands up. Don't. Do not. Get the dog off of it.
Again, this was an attempted traffic stop of an individual from Tennessee. His name is Jadarius Rose, 23 years old. He had failed to stop for that inspection because the semi he was driving was missing a mud flap. The statement from the Ohio State Highway Patrol: as troopers were attempting to gain compliance by providing verbal commands to the suspect, the Circleville Police Department deployed their canine, which resulted in the suspect being bitten. Now, Circleville Police and actually the mayor have put out very few comments, only to say that the canine officer from Circleville has been placed on administrative leave. We're going to bring now he is an expert in the field of canine and canine training. Michael Gould was appointed to the New York City Police Department's canine unit in 1982. He became the canine trainer in 1984 for the New York City Police Department. And then in 1998, also doing a certification with the FBI National Academy. Mr. Gould, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Great, and thank you for having me.
We appreciate it, and in full disclosure, Mr. Gould reached out to us. Nowadays, he does a lot of expert witness testimony in cases like this, where a canine officer, a canine dog is used, whether it was appropriate force or not. Circleville Police Department is investigating. They convened a panel of appropriate use force within their own department. The Ohio State Highway Patrol is also now investigating the use of that canine officer. Mr. Gould, you are the expert here. You have seen this video. Was this an appropriate use of a canine?
Right. So let me begin by saying I rarely opine on things that may be taken out of context and snippets of information. But generally speaking, this scene originally looked perfectly contained. The motorist was contained. It was daylight. He was compliant. So, and it seemed like the state police, whoever was in charge of the scene, was doing a great job. They contained him, and regardless if he was having a mental breakdown or if he's a hijack victim, we don't know these things. So our job is to de-escalate. So from what I saw, and these events are chaotic. This could have been 2 o'clock in the morning. So just think of that added stress. So they're always stressful. Communication is vital. I don't know if everyone was on the same page. I don't know if they trained together. As you said, this is a multi-agency event. And when I look at these things and I do these, this is not, I hate to say it, but this is not something uncommon. These things are occurring, with some level of frequency. But I always ask myself, how would this event come to a conclusion if there was no dog? Well, if the dog didn't show up on the scene, police make arrests similar to this thousands of times a day. Not every department has the luxury or a canine unit available to them. They don't have that tool in their toolbox. So I would say if we remove the canine, I'm certain this person would have been either apprehended or taken into, whether it was a mental health crisis, whether he could have just as well been. And I didn't look at the details of the backstory of the investigation, but I have to think, is this a hostage situation? Is this vehicle being hijacked? So unfortunately, so I kind of, my heart goes out because, look, I have a bias towards law enforcement. I've been 25 years as a police officer using these tools. This is a tremendous tool. The use of a canine for scent detection and apprehension under very limited circumstances is a wonderful thing. So this is a case that looks like it went sideways. I don't think anybody could look at it unless I'm missing something. I don't, as you said, he looked very compliant. And he was surrounded and contained, and so there's something here that, to me, is obviously wasn't appropriate. Did the dog get loose? Did he lose his grip? I have no idea, but it certainly wasn't, in my mind, justifiable.
And there is a little bit of the video, and I want to walk through it again. It is tough to tell if, when you hear the Ohio State Highway Patrolman saying, "Don't release the dog, he's surrendering, he's got his hands up." I don't know the exact words, I don't have them in front of me, but it's pretty unclear if the Circleville officer who's 20, 30 yards away can hear that. The Ohio State Highway Patrolman is clearly not screaming that. He is not yelling at the top of his lungs to get him to not release the dog. And then there's an interesting, where, as you said, did the dog get away from him? And in fact, we're going to watch this video again. You see the dog kind of get disoriented, and the dog starts coming at the Ohio State Highway Patrolman until the Circleville officer, you see him give the command, and he points at the driver who is down. So let's take a look again, and then we'll talk about sort of this confusion. Take a look.
Release the dog with his hands up. Do not release the dog with his hands up. Don't. Do not get the dog off.
So he has to yell here. The dog is charging at the Ohio State Highway Patrolman. There could have been a whole nother situation there that the patrol could have used deadly force. They've got a canine officer charging at them. That didn't happen. But there's, like you said, a couple of things here went sideways. How do we try to judge what happened, what went right, what went wrong? And that's not to say that there can't be multiple things that went right and there can't be multiple things that went wrong.
Right. So obviously an investigation has to take place, but you have nothing better. I mean, you have a panoramic, a high definition audio of the crime scene or the event. So obviously things have to be investigated, but it's important to understand that dogs can't make moral decisions. They don't know the motorist from the police officer. So when the dog was deployed, whether by accident or intentionally, you could see quite clearly that he was heading towards the law enforcement personnel. And remarkably, they stood very still. Had they moved or turned, the dog very well could have engaged them. And that's not uncommon. That happens. And these are all the things that is kind of incumbent on the canine handler to take that into consideration. The canine handler is a specialist that deploys this very special use of force. And so the dog, this is just a game for him. Then he was redirected towards the motorist. And the question is, of course, why? What was the thought process? Even at that point, he had, and again, I'm not judging this situation. In fact, as I said, my kind of heart goes out to the officers that were trying to contain the scene, and they were doing it very, very well. until the dog appeared and was released for whatever reason. So it's important to know that the dog is just operating like a heat-seeking missile, and he's targeting whatever he thinks he's looking at. He doesn't understand who is what. So yeah, I think that you got to really drill into what was it in the mind. Of course, everything is judged in the mind of the handler at the time he released the dog.
Right.
What was he?
Right, and it was bang, bang. We are speaking with Michael Gould. He is a former New York City Canine officer. He also went on to do the training for the New York City Police Department Canine Unit, as well as other departments. He now serves as sort of an expert witness when it comes to canine cases. Let's talk in generalities, and I know we have the benefit of doing generalities because we're not standing on the side of that highway. In general, when you are training officers with their canine unit, is there ever an instance where an individual has their hands up where it is appropriate to send the dog?
My general comment would be no, because hands are what hurt us. We know that in law enforcement, just like any offensive, whether you use a taser, a weapon, a chemical spray, these are offensive weapons and they can be used at different times for different situations. So without we don't have a fleeing felon. So there's usually very specific guidelines, just like pursuing vehicles. Everything is written down for the most part. So in my experience, I have a person that's compliant, following direction. The problem in these chaotic scenes is that multiple people may be giving commands that we don't hear about. So somebody might be saying, get down on your knees, and another person might be saying, walk towards me with you. So it gets very chaotic. And I completely understand. I've been in these situations. So it's unfortunate, obviously. And, I would like to, what's needed here is the explanation of what was going through, because he might have seen something. I'm being the devil's advocate. The canine handler might have seen something from his perspective that nobody else saw. But from the view of the camera, which, as I said, I'm hesitant to opine on without really listening and hearing the facts that may or may not be there. But certainly from this video, it would be hard to understand the use of the dog.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that we need to let cooler heads prevail. Let's let the investigation by both the Circleville Police Department and the Ohio State Highway Patrol play out. Mr. Gould, we certainly appreciate the time and your expertise in all of this. Thank you for reaching out to us, and thanks for shedding some light on this situation. We truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good day, sir. Again, as we continue to cover the story, this video is obviously making the rounds nationally because of what it shows. We just want to bring you the experts. Let's get you some information so that when you and your friends, your family, when you're seeing it on social media, that you're a little bit more informed as to what happened and what the experts say. If we have any other information, any other breaking news, we're going to bring it to you here on our digital properties. Remember, our 3.5 hours of news starts at 3 o'clock on Channel 19, and we'll have the very latest there. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media at Cleveland 19 News.
Alrighty, Mr. Gould, it was certainly appreciated. Your expertise.